Okay. Tyne, we're going to start
Yeah,
with
my earliest
an
memory.
interview
Mhm.
for you to really just for posterity for your
Oh,
soon-to-be great-grandchildren.
oh,
I don't know
whatever,
how soon, but at some point in life,
whatever.
to hear about you and really about your family.
Yeah,
So, why don't you talk about your earliest memories first?
I will. I do recall early on, I remember the house that I lived in until I went to college at 16 or 17. And I recall that we had the dog in the backyard, and that dog was, later we had a Cocker Spaniel, but the first dog was the Russian Wolfhound, Olga. I vaguely remember Olga. I was scared of Olga because Olga was taller than I was at the time. But I have that memory of Olga, and Olga lived outside in a doghouse, and I remember we had a storm cellar that was like what today would be a tornado cellar, and the two doors opened like that and went to the basement. And I recall that we had a well, a pump, where we could pump water. I mean, these vague memories of different things. And Mr. Tucker, the neighbor next door, I was probably 3 or 4 or 5 or something, and he had a chicken that he was gonna eat, and he killed, and he put the chicken on a piece. There was a wood from where they had cut down the tree, like a wood base, and he chopped the chicken's head off, and the chicken was running, and I was screaming. I remember that vividly because I was so scared to see that thing running around without a head.
Yeah.
And bleeding, and it just, that was an awful experience.
Was this the house on 10th Street?
Yeah, this is the 10th Street house. I recall a lot of things about that house. We used to eat in the dining room on Sundays, and the maid would serve. We usually had prime rib roast, or we would have, it was pretty much the same thing. It was always a roast. Prime rib was primarily it, I think. And Dad would carve it. He had a carving set where he would, I don't remember what you called that.
Knife sharpener?
Well, it was a sharpener, but it was like a steel stick. They had a name anyway. I recall all these things, and the dining room had leaded glass windows in like a break front, but it was built into the wall. The whole wall was that. And Mother had china in there and crystal and whatever. And we were always served formally with a tablecloth, and Mother had the bell, and she'd ring, and the maid would come.
Was this only on Sundays?
No, we had
Every day.
Every day we ate. We would eat in sometimes the breakfast nook, which was built off the like the pantry. It was called like a pantry. This was an old house when we moved in. It was, I think when Dad bought it, it was 25 years old already. But he wanted that house, and I remember we had a streetcar line, and the streetcar would, they would come also with a horse and a buggy and bring ice cream, Bachman's ice cream. And you would go out in the front and he would serve you a little dip of ice cream. It was a nickel in those days. I mean, the things that come back to me that I remember, little bits and pieces, but they're fun and they're interesting. And like I remember with a telephone, we had the old stick telephone with the mouthpiece. And I think originally we had a party line, something rings a bell. We had a party line, and then eventually.
What does that mean, a party line?
It was more than one people on the line, and we had to get off if somebody else wanted to use it. It was because it was in the very beginning, early on, and then we had a private line. It's just these little vignettes come back to me. I know I'm all over the place, but it's just what I remember.
Mm-hmm.
And Sundays we would always listen to the New York Philharmonic. Mother would put it on, and Toscanini was the conductor at the time.
And on a big radio?
Dad bought a K-Part.
What's that?
Oh, that was the first machine that played records one after another. It would work mechanically, and they were rare and they were very expensive, and I remember Dad bought that so we could listen to classical records. And
But would you listen to the Philharmonic on that as well? Was there a radio?
oh no, well, the radio, that was when we heard the Philharmonic. And I remember Pearl Harbor announced on the radio. It was really interesting.
This was in the days before television, right?
Yeah, long before TV. And long before airplanes, really. I mean, I think they were just starting, because everywhere we went would be on a train. You know, whatever, I went to college on a train. I went to camp on a train. So I had no airplane experience in my life. Early on, we had, let's see what I've also discussed. I remember the neighbors, and I remember putting a chicken foot in Mrs. Scott's mailbox because I didn't like her. She wasn't nice. The Tuckers were nice.
What did Miss Scott do to you, or Mrs. Scott, that you didn't like her?
She didn't want me to go near her fence or something, and I would hold on to the fence when I was learning to ride a bike. And you know, anyway.
How did she ever find out it was you?
No, I don't think she did. No,
So you never got in trouble over that?
Not really, I don't think. I don't recall getting into trouble. Got into trouble over stealing cherries from a tree somewhere in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't like that.
Did you have a maid that helped with dinner or made dinner, or
Always.
Gazelle make dinner? Or?
We had a maid, we had a laundress. I remember the laundress, and I remember that she would hang the sheets outside to dry, and they'd flap in the wind, and she was a very, very skinny, thin, elderly African-American woman, but she was really a sweet soul. She was very nice to me and would, talk with me when I was little and stuff. The maids were all lovely, and we always had a live-in, so we always had someone that would serve the meals and clean and make the beds, and you know, Mother never let us sit on the bed, and she never let me go barefoot. I remember that vividly because my feet are so tender, and I think it's because I never.
Why wouldn't she let you go barefoot?
I don't know. She just didn't approve of it. And we were to keep the place clean and not bring, I guess, dirty feet. I don't know. Mother was very sort of Victorian about things like that.
Did the maid live in with you?
Always lived in. They always lived in. They had
So multiple people.
No, the laundress didn't live in. The man that drove the car didn't live in. Red. His name was Red. And I remember, I think he must have been Native American, or why would he have been called Red? But he would drive me to school to make sure I was safe. He taught Mother to drive. And Mother said he was never a chauffeur, he was only to teach her to drive. But he washed the car, and he would do the windows, and you know, he would help around the house. So he was like a double house man. He was a nice gentleman, I
You
remember.
called him Red, you think, because he was Indian?
I don't know, but that was what I was told to call him. His name was Red.
You don't recall did he look like you?
I don't remember that, honey. I never thought of any distinction. I was always taught these people were nice and we were to be respectful. Always. We were never to treat anybody, any of the help, other than in a respectful way. And I'm glad, because, I mean, that's what I was brought up. That was a very important value that I took from my family. And I love it. And I tried to teach it to you and Susie and Julie, you know.
Treat help with respect.
Yeah, honey, people deserve that, no matter who they are.
What kind of car did you have? I presume just one car when you were little.
Well, yeah, Mother didn't, in the beginning, I guess she didn't drive, because then later Red taught her to drive, so, you know. But we had I just remembered they had a potty in the car for me. It was built into the Cadillac. Dad had a Cadillac, I think, and he ordered it, and they had a potty for me. So I could poo when we were anywhere, like over at Aunt Lottie's or.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and my grandma, Dad's mother, Grandma Esther Endlich, I vaguely remember her as being a very rotund, a very kind woman with a strong accent, like a German accent, and Grandma Endlich would, she had those pottery, I vaguely remember the potteries, like Delft pottery that stored sugar or flour or something. And the rug that was in that main living room in her house on Fillmore Street was what was that, a tiger? You have it. That.
Oh, okay.
That was
yeah,
from
like
Grandma.
tigers and
Yeah, that was from
with
Grandma.
with the hunters.
The head, yeah. As a child, you know, we would climb on it. Harold and I.
Or are you talking about the rug?
Yeah.
No, that was a jaguar.
Jaguar.
So that was in her house.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, honey, that's old. That wasn't just
Yeah,
purchased recently and
Yeah.
killed, you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
I'm sure.
Yeah, very old. And I remember that big brass pot that had the jade tree in it. That was in her house too.
Wow.
Vaguely, I remember these little bits and things. I remember Dad's sister Lillian, who died very early. She was in her 40s, and she had polycystic kidney disease.
How old was Grandma Endlich when
She died. She wasn't very old. She died of heart attack. She was 75.
So how old were you? Do you remember?
I must have been 7 or 8 or something.
Okay.
Vaguely. I just remember Dad being really, really sad. He was very close to Grandma Endlich. He was
How
very.
long did she live in Topeka?
Dad brought her there when, well, she was already, and you know, I don't know how old she was, Steve, but he brought them all there.
Not Lewis. Lewis.
No, Lewis never was there.
Lewis died.
Lewis died before Mother met him, before Dad married. I mean, I never knew him. I only knew about him from things I've read or heard.
But he brought Esther there after he got married, or before he was married.
I might have been before. No, I'm not sure. I don't.
She had her own house, a small house.
Yeah, it was one of those, that, Carolyn, what would you call that? What does, our friend have one like it? Like out of Montgomery Ward, what was that called? It was
They
a
were
bungalow. It
House
was,
kits.
huh?
They used to sell them in Montgomery Ward and
Yeah.
It was
Sears.
off Paquette.
Yeah,
No, I don't think it was, I mean, it was up, I think when Dad bought it. I mean, he didn't put it up, that was,
Yeah.
but it was a bungalow on one floor.
One bedroom.
That I don't remember, honey. You know, I just vaguely.
Did she used to cook? Did she make food for you ever, or
What?
did she used to cook?
Did Grandma Emily cook? Well, I think, I don't recall, but I'm sure she did, because Dad loved her food. I mean, evidently she was a good cook. We would eat over at Aunt Lottie's often on a, what day would that be? Thursday night when the maids were out or something. I think she had Emma, was her live-in, and Emma, I remember vividly, Emma had, somebody had cut part of her thumb off. I don't know, maybe some accident, but she'd serve the soup with that thumb, and it as a child, I didn't understand, and I thought it was creepy, but I couldn't say anything, and I never did. But it was bizarre, kind of. I don't know. That, and Lottie's house was huge and stately,
Where did she live?
next door to Grandma Endlich on Fillmore.
Oh, okay.
1181, and the other one was 1180 or something, or I don't know. 1181 was Fillmore though. And it was around the corner from the Board versus Education building that held the kids that had to go to school separately before separate and equal and the Board of Education, the Supreme Court ruling. And Dad knew, and I met the lawyer. He was a very fine gentleman, an African-American gentleman. Oh, there's just so much in my past, it's hard to keep track of all of it. Let's-
Did you have dinner regularly with Grandma Endlich as well, or?
Yeah, it was always at Lottie's,
Okay.
because, you know, she had the help and a huge dining room table that held all of us, and Aunt Lottie was so sweet. She was like Sally. I mean, a very kind, she was a lot like Dad, more like Dad. Blanche, Aunt Blanche, her sister and Dad's sister was a very different one. That was the one that adopted Bernie,
Uh-huh.
who has Edie, you know.
Sure.
Blanche.
Yeah, I knew Blanche well. I don't remember Lottie at all. The only thing I remember is that she died.
When we were in
Estes
Colorado,
Yeah, in Estes Park.
right, and you were fishing with
Yeah.
Dad.
Was that a surprise that she
Yeah, I think nobody knew. She died suddenly, I think.
heart attack or?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, that was it. High blood pressure always ran in the family. There was, let's see, let me think.
What other family members or
Oh, I
close
re-
friends do you remember spending
Oh,
time
I
with?
remember Aunt Minnie. These are sisters of Grandma Endlich. Aunt Minnie, Aunt Rose. Wait a minute. There was Lottie, Blanche, Minnie, Rose,
But they
and
weren't.
Lily Endlich.
Minnie and Rose were sisters of Esther, not Lottie and Blanche, right?
Wait a minute.
It was
Lottie,
Lottie and Blanche and
Are-
Lily.
daughters of Esther, aren't they? No,
I mean,
wait.
so Grandpa had three sisters, right? Lottie, Blanche, Grandpa was the oldest, I think,
Well,
and then
he had twin brothers.
I know, but they passed away when he was young.
Infants.
And
Yeah.
so then after him was Lottie or Lily?
I think Lily was younger. I think it was Lottie and then
Then
Lily and then
Blanche.
Blanche. Yeah, that
Okay.
was that.
So let's talk about Minnie and Rose. Were these Esther's sisters?
Yes.
Okay.
From New York. Minnie and Esther and Aunt Rose, and there was another one. Oh Lord, I'll think of it in a minute.
So tell us what you remember about them.
They would come to visit, and from New York. And honey, I just vaguely remember them. I was little. They were, you know, I don't know. They were.
But none of them ever did they stay in Topeka long when they came?
I don't know.
We guess they would. It's such a long way. They'd be coming by train, presumably.
Oh right. I don't know, honey. I don't recall.
Do you remember anything about either of them that was distinctive, or?
No, not really. I really don't. If I did, I've forgotten. I'm sure I did at some point.
But they both lived in New York.
They were all from New York. Yes. And they all had different families, you know.
What was their last name?
Minnie.
Was that on the Sullivan side, or?
No. Seliger was on Mother's side through
Okay.
Pop Dower. This is Dad's
Okay,
side,
yeah.
the Endlich side.
You don't know their names.
Honey, I hope it's written. I had it somewhere, you know, I think who
Said,
has
oh, fine.
Fine.
That was-
that's all with the Fines.
So Fine, that was the Fine family.
Right,
Okay,
on that side.
yeah,
Esther was a Fine.
yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
Seliger was on mother's side. And I
Yeah.
remember that side too.
Okay. Let's take a quick break.
Sure.